the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
I think you're going to like the show today as we're talking about friendship with Padre Pio. Joining us as our spiritual director today is Sister Faustina Maria Pia. Sister Faustina is a sister of life and currently resides in New York, where she serves as the local superior of Annunciation Mother House. Several years ago, in her own struggle to trust the Lord, she received an inspiration to compose a prayer that may be familiar to many of you. It's called simply the Litany of Trust. Welcome back to the show, Sister. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a joy to be with you.
Now, I have to start off by saying, Sister Faustina Maria Pia, is that a nod to Padre Pio right there?
It absolutely is. So Maria Pia is my baptismal middle name, and Faustina is my baptismal name, so I just kept my entire name. I joke with my parents that they gave me a religious, name at birth, that it was an arranged marriage. But I really owe so much to Padre Pio, so I absolutely love that I had the opportunity to choose that name for myself as a part of my religious name.
Wow, that's so fantastic. I understand that actually you do owe a lot to Saint Padre Pio, including your very existence here on this earth in some roundabout way. Is that right?
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful story, but my parents, who were in their 20s, in the last few years of Padre Pio's life, so in the 1960s, they had heard about Padre Pio both independently. My mother grew up in Germany, and she had moved with her family to Austria, and her mother found out about this holy mystic friar that was working miracles, and so they all took a trip down together, and it was August of 1966. And my father, he was born in the United States. His parents were Italian immigrants, and he decided to go to medical school in Italy. So he was studying in Rome. He had also heard about Padre Pio. A lot of people telling stories, miracles, a lot of people that his family knew as well. So he also went at the same time, August of 66, to see what the stories were about, to see if he could lay eyes on Padre Pio. And my mom and my dad were actually standing next to each other at Mass, where Padre Pio was celebrating Mass one morning.
Just to jump in, at this point, they haven't met. I mean, other than just standing next to each other.
Just standing next to each other at Mass. So my dad noticed my mom and thought, well, she looks like a lovely woman. I'd love to talk to her. But, here they are at Padre Pio's Mass. Then he didn't see her too much. He saw her around the next couple of days, but she was with her family. My dad's a bit on the meek side, so he didn't feel comfortable walking up to a family. And he noticed that she was having a German hymnal, and he didn't know German either. But a couple of days later, my mom's family decided to go back up to Austria, and she had really fallen in love with Padre Pio. His strong spiritual fatherhood really reached out to her heart, and she had the sense that she didn't want to leave. And so she told her family, and they returned to Austria. And so she's walking out of the church one night after they left, and she didn't have a lot of money. She grew up very poor. So she got a little worried about where she was going to stay and how she was going to pay for her way back and all these practical things. So she started to pray to Padre Pio. I mean, he was not dead yet, but she started to pray to him, say, will you provide a place for me to stay here and keep me safe? And as she's saying this prayer, they're locking up the church, and my dad sees her for the first time alone. He walks up to her, and she says, I can't really chat. I'm trying to find some lodging and places. She knows a little English. She's talking to him. And he says, hold on a second. Wait right here. And my mom didn't have a lot of options, so she did that. He goes, comes back, finds her a place to stay, pays for it, gives her, a bunch of food. She didn't tell him that she didn't have a lot of money. And she took a little note of my dad, but honestly, in her heart, she said, wow, Padre Pio, that was such a quick answer to my prayer. Meanwhile, Padre Pio was finding there somebody who would provide for her for the rest of her life. But they got to, a little bit of interaction the next couple of days. They exchanged addresses. My dad asked for her address. A few weeks later, he visited her up in Austria. He took a car up there. My mom, to be honest, was not super serious about marriage. Her father had left her family, had been divorced, and so she wasn't ready to jump into marriage by any means. And this is a big show of, attention that he was driving up from Italy. So my mom was quite blunt with my dad and just let him know that she wasn't super serious.
Okay.
And my dad was very taken by my mom. So right after visiting my mom, he went straight back down to San Giovanni Rotondo to Padre Pio, and Padre Pio could read souls. So after confession, you could ask advice, and he would often really be very helpful. So my dad's going to confession of Padre Pio. And then afterwards he says, Padre Pio, I met a German girl. She's a good Catholic. And Padre Pio cut him off and he said, marry her. And he said, prepare well for marriage. So my dad was so excited because he knew that my mother really trusted Padre Pio and his guidance, and yet he knew it was too much to tell her. It would be a little bit too quick, too soon. But a couple months later, after he would visit, and he learned German pretty quickly, he was very motivated, he asked my mom, he said, why don't you come down to San Giovanni Rotondo during your Christmas break, and we'll meet there again. I'll come back to San Giovanni and we'll be able to see Padre Pio again.
Yeah.
And so during this time of December, they used to have a little walkway where Padre Pio, going back and forth to the friary after confession, he would walk through a hallway, all the men would gather, and he would just bless them and kind of, stop very briefly. But it was just a space to kind of see him a little bit closer up.
Mm-hmm.
And another hallway, all the women would wait. So this one afternoon, my parents were doing just that. And right before Padre Pio walked in the room, my mom sees a younger friar motioning to her to come follow him. And she didn't want to give up her spot. Padre Pio was about to walk in, but he persisted, this young friar. So she followed him. He brings her to the old sacristy of the old church there in San Giovanni Rotondo, and it was dark and no one was there. He leaves her there, walks away. Then this friar goes and he gets my dad. He pulls my dad into the old sacristy of the old church. And my mom and my dad are left there alone. They're like, did he say anything to you? No, I don't know what's happening. And they're waiting. And a few minutes later, the door opens and Padre Pio walks in. And my mom said she doesn't know how to describe the moment. She said, when you're in the presence of somebody who's just so holy, you instantly just want to get on your knees.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. They didn't say a word. They just got down to their knees. My mom said she knew that she had heard of these stories that he could read souls. And she so wanted to look at him, but she was scared to look at him. She really didn't have a father in her life. And she had all these fears kind of about future, as a young girl would, who didn't know that love of a father. And something inside of her told her at that moment, look at him, look into his eye. And so with all the courage she had, she lifted her head and she looked towards him.
Mm-hmm.
And she said his eyes looked at her with such love and affection that in that moment she just felt the goodness of her own person, the core of her being.
Wow.
It was a beautiful healing moment. And he, was kind of shuffling over. He was already older by that point, shuffling over, walking to them. He didn't say a word. He stopped right in front of them. He put one hand on my mom's head, one hand on my dad's head, and then he blessed them, one blessing for both of them. And my mom was just weeping because this is a father's blessing that she would never have. And in these few precious moments, there was a freedom in her heart to say yes to God's plan that enabled her really to be able to say, okay, you're going to give me the strength to do this. And she had always been attracted to my father and loved him, but the idea of what that would look like when she didn't have a good example of that was intimidating. And Padre Pio, this spiritual fatherhood was so deeply being lived out that he was walking into that space and healing those places. And so he walked away, and my dad jokes that was their engagement because they had come to that visit to get clarity about if they should be kind of getting more serious going forward in this direction. That's why they were gathering that December. Wow. And Padre Pio, he could read those. He almost, as if he knew that that's what they needed, he arranged this. And then they talked to the friar afterwards that had called them into that room. They said, did Padre Pio tell you to do this? What happened? And basically this friar said to my dad, he said, these things happen all the time, but I think what happened, he said, I just had this impulse to do this. And he thinks that it was the guardian angel, Padre Pio. He would send his guardian angels, the friars, to arrange things during the day, and they would just be impelled to do things, and things would be arranged. So this young friar had no idea what he was doing, but he was following the strong impulse. And it was amazing. And so my dad and my mom actually got married there in San Giovanni Rotondo a month before Padre Pio died.
Wow.
In August of 1968, and Padre Pio was no longer doing weddings at that point. He was very sick. But he came down in a wheelchair before their wedding mass, and he blessed their rings, and he gave them a picture of the patroness of the monastery there. It's Our Lady of Grace of San Giovanni Rotondo, and really was able to congratulate them on this day like a father would be, and neither of my mom or my dad's father were there at the wedding. So it was a beautiful beginning to a life together, which 56 years married with 8 children, and all of us have Pio or Pia as a middle name. So we really do. We look to him as this father that stepped into both our parents' lives and really was enabling them to thrive, not only in this life for a marriage, but also a faith that would bring them into the next.
What an amazing story by Sister Faustina Maria Pia, our spiritual director for today, as we're looking at friendship with Padre Pio. And I'm sure our listeners have stories as well. Maggie is calling in from Oak Park, Illinois. Maggie, welcome.
Hello. I really could use some help with this. I had a very hard relationship cut off with my father, and we were cut off for a lot of years. And when he died, he tried reaching out at one point, and I refused. He passed away while we were still cut off. I had a spiritual director that told me that what couldn't be done on earth, I could do in the spiritual realm. And I've not approached it too much, but lately I've been going to the cemetery, where he's buried next to my mother, and starting to look at the possibilities of forgiveness and healing. But it feels like it's going to take such a depth of forgiveness, and I don't know where to begin. And this beautiful stuff you're talking about, Padre Pio, may be my great invitation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm so sorry for all the suffering that you've endured. I'm sure, the reason why it's hard to forgive is because there's been a lot of hurt, But Padre Pio is absolutely reaching out to you today. I absolutely believe that he wants nothing more than to help you receive the love that is owed to you as a daughter. Whatever your father endured in his life, we don't know. We don't want to make any judgments that maybe made him react or not be able to love you in the way that you deserved. Padre Pio wants to help bridge that gap so that your heart can be light and full. And you say, Padre Pio, I don't know the path ahead. I don't know how to get to where I'm going. This freedom of my heart to say, Father, I forgive you, but please take me by the hand, Padre Pio. Give me the strength and the courage to begin this, and take me through step by step so that I can not feel alone in this, and have the strength of a Father who has all the grace that I need to unburden my heart, and to really live free. Because, again, forgiveness is not forgetting what happened or excusing it either. It's absolutely not. And it's not even reconciliation. That is separate. But to forgive is something that God does ask us because he knows that it hurts us. So Padre Pio can definitely be a friend and an advocate to carry you on this path that is too steep for you to walk alone.
Oh, thank you. That gives me so much hope. Thank you.
Absolutely. Today is a beautiful new day.
And just to know that that's true each and every day as well in this life of grace, that each day is a new day. Maggie, thank you so much for the call. Prayers for you, prayers through invoking the intercession of St. Padre Pio, our saint of the day today. This entire episode of The Inner Life is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today. And thanks for listening.